Hi, I'm Naomi Eklund, Jennifer Dahlberg here, and we want to talk about mindset and self-mastery. I've been thinking a lot about mindset and self-mastery. As a lot of you know, in the last year I had cancer. Well, I actually had cancer for like 5 years. Last year they found it and I had surgery and all of that, and I'm better. I think I'm all clear. And you know, that's been a really, really interesting, challenging journey because, of course, the self-judgment floods in. Well, if you'd been doing all of your spiritual work right and blah, 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 blah. Like, what did you do to cause this? Well, I didn't do anything to cause it. And even the medical doctors were like, yeah, no, this is like, you didn't make this happen. We don't even really know how this happened. And, you know, I had University of Chicago medical doctors stumped. And then they were equally stumped after I started doing my meditation and they couldn't find any residuals anywhere. And I am not indicating to anybody that meditation is meant to replace medical care. I am not a medical doctor and I cannot give you medical advice. I'm simply talking about my experience. So the self-mastery thing, this has really, really, really been on my mind for a couple of reasons. One, I post-surgery, all of these different sort of medical things, there have been things I've learned about myself, including I have ADHD, which is not especially uncommon, especially in empaths and people who we would consider sensitives. But it is extremely highly unlikely to have it undiagnosed in my age group. Mm-hmm. And so, what does that mean? I mean, I think they're discovering more and more people are ADHD, and some people say that it's because of the computers, and there may be certain brain adaptations because of the computers and all the screen times, but I think ADHD, from what I can tell, is actually more of a chemical and biological issue than necessarily a brain adaptation. So not a doctor again. Certainly I have had ADHD symptoms my whole life. A lot of us have, right, Jen? Yeah. We just grew up being, bad kids or rebellious kids or whatever, like kids who didn't know how to shut up, or the kids who were fairly and roundly scolded. I think that's there's a lot of Gen Xers out there talking about how we were the latchkey kids. Well, that may have saved some of us from getting in a lot of trouble. But back to the self-mastery point, even just understanding ourselves helps us to have more mastery. Jen and I were having a conversation earlier that, she watched me sort of like losing energy, and I was watching myself lose energy. And what we were talking about is, and Jen is very good at being compassionate, and she was talking about how Jen, do you want to go ahead and say that, how like we expect perfection of ourselves before we can do anybody else any good, but how that's an illusion? You said that.
We tend to have this expectation of ourselves that we have to have all the answers and everything all dialed in before we can advise anyone else. And my question, whenever I hear anyone, including myself, say something like that is, do you have that expectation of anyone you ever go to? And no one ever does. No one ever expects another human to be perfect. And yet we somehow put this weight on ourselves to be perfect. It's so unfair. I do it all the time. And you remind me not to do it, so it's one of those things where I have to put notes in front of myself to ask that question, like, am I supposed to be perfect? No. Spoiler alert, no one is. None of
So
us.
I think that's one of the things where people get tripped up. It's like, well, I'm doing this mindset work and I still have problems, or I'm doing this meditation and I still have, we're still human beings.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the reward comes in, and this is something that I've noticed for myself. So mindset work for me is a lifesaver. Mindset work is why I am alive. It's literally the reason. And I have a friend who's been in my life for a really long time. He's like a brother to me. And a couple years ago, he said to me, you know, before you started doing all this work, I'd never met anyone so sad in my entire life. And he's like, you're a completely different person now. And it kind of took me back because in my own experience, I didn't know that I had grown that much. And that's what mindset does, is it reprograms you. So it's not that the situations in life stop happening. It's not that you don't have issues with people around you. It's not that you don't still feel bad or have triggers or responses to your childhood stuff that you forgot about. Like, it's not like none of that stuff stops. It's just that you all of a sudden have the ability to process it in the moment, to be aware of what's happening. And, you know, for me personally, something that, you know, if somebody said something to me, it could trigger me into a suicidal depression for 6 months to a year. Whereas now someone could say the exact same thing. It still hurts my feelings. I still get really sad, but I go upstairs and I cry for 6 hours, not 6 months. And that's the awareness that it's given me to have these habits of thought, these truths to disrupt my negative self-talk that are based on lies, you know, and you don't realize they're lies until you start doing the work. And so, you know, earlier when you were talking about self-mastery, to me it's like the fact that you can accept something's happening and being triggered in you and you're processing it. What's more masterful than that? What's more masterful than understanding that that's what's happening? You know?
great. And that's one of the, I'm going to go back to, and you've heard me say this before, and you will hear me say this again, because it's one of my bugaboos, which is in our schools, we too often expect people to know the answers instead of learn the material.
Yeah. How did you come to that answer? It just gets skipped. I mean, our generation, I find it very interesting. I didn't realize that this was an experiment on our generation, but we were literally just taught to memorize everything. And we don't have any reason for why we know that answer. We just know that answer, you know? And now they're teaching math in a different way, and people are all up in arms about it because it's not how we learned it. But it's more about the process of learning. Like the learning is where you figure things out. That's why, like, it was very important to me that my kids went to college, not for their degree, but for what they would learn about themselves with 4 years of independence without the financial burden. Right? Like, that was really important to me. Like, what did you discover about yourself in that process? What they learned in their classroom of parroting back, that's still not resonating with them. You know, I went to classes with them on parent weekends, and I'm sitting here like, how much am I paying for this? This is just, I could learn this on Udemy. You know, like, I don't know why I'm paying for this, but what they were learning was how to manage themselves and how to get from point A to point B without anyone waking them up, and what they cared about and who they wanted to be friends with and what their relationships with love, you know, a lover would look like, you know, like all of those things. You don't learn those things unless you're experiencing, you know, and we can't outlearn circumstances. So all we can do is learn how to process circumstances. Some of those processes are going to feel good and some of those are going to feel horrible, and all of them are right.
Well, I first of all want to say I have a very different feeling about, not, I have a different feeling about education.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot more value on the education process, not in the memorization, but in understanding higher concepts and higher ideas. I don't personally think we do enough of that in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to thank some of my teachers who I had some exceptional teachers
Yeah.
who did ask us to think. And that was part of how I knew the contrast between the ones who did and didn't make us think.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very grateful to a number of my teachers who were still a little bit more older school. I'm a little older than you.
Mm-hmm.
I think 6 or 7 years. Also, I was also in the Midwest in a private school, and you were on the West Coast in a public school. Very different dynamics. So my experience was I had a lot of teachers who did just want us to memorize, but I still had a lot of teachers who they still had the freedom to challenge us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that good teachers being given more freedom
Yes.
to challenge us, you know, that would make me more excited. And higher education being the teachers being professors being given less of a political script and more of an truly academic point of view of challenging people. Like I want Severus Snape to be everybody's teacher.
Yeah. Love it.
He might not be your friend, but you're going to learn something.
I'm all about the learning. I love that.
So I think how this all fits into self-mastery is that whether or not someone outside of you is challenging you or teaching you or giving you that structure, there has to be this internal inquiry, this internal drive and desire. I read something, and I don't remember exactly where, excuse me, but they were basically saying that the human mind is designed to put out as little energy as it possibly can. Like everything is just like conserve energy, don't burn energy, don't go outside of your comfort zone. That's the human mind. Like be comfortable, don't learn new things, don't challenge your predispositions, don't challenge your trauma, don't challenge your programming. Fall in line, do what you're supposed to do, don't cause problems. Don't burn up energy you don't have to burn up. But the human soul or the spirit is profoundly inquisitive, is profoundly purposeful, and wants to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the places where self-mastery comes in, is when you recognize that the human mind is lazy.
Yeah.
When you recognize that if you really look at your mind, it's happy eating pizza and binge watching. No disrespect to pizza or binge watching your favorite show. That's a good idea. Sometimes that's exactly the right thing. But if it's a way of life, you might want to think about that a second time. Question that. But if, you know, are you gonna like play chess? Are you gonna learn a skill? Are you gonna develop yourself? Are you going to do something that challenges your mind to not be comfortable? Which is why mastery and growth are uncomfortable. Yeah. Because we have to question our own mind. You know, I question my mind. Is it true that I'm depressed? Or is it that I have become depleted? If I'm depleted, then what do I do? If I'm really depressed, is that an emotional state? Do I need help? Do I need to, you know, what do I need to do? Yeah. This is why inquiry leads to self-awareness, and self-awareness is critical for us to be able to develop any kind of mastery. You know, people, it's really easy to master something that you were taught and to use the same hammer and the same nail over and over and over again. You know, it's just like
Practice makes permanent.
Yes.
Mhm,
You know, but if you have learned how to use a hammer and a nail,
mhm,
and if that is the only thing you ever do, then there's a limitation to your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and earning capacity.
mhm,
But if you stretch yourself, well, what is this tool? What is that tool? Can I make a tool?
mhm.
Like, can I use this tool in a different way? You
Yeah.
know, that's the thing where a lot of times when people come up against self-help, self-development, doing something different, self-awareness, people push back.
Mhm,
Like, oh no, I don't need that. I don't want that. And that goes back to our earlier point of, well, I did my meditation and I still didn't feel good.
mhm. I meditated one time. How come I'm not enlightened?
Or I meditate for 10 minutes a day and I still have problems. Well, you know what? Guess what? I do too. And guess what? You know,
I still woke up human today, so.
come on, you know, or I did my affirmations and I still don't feel happy. Well,
Mhm,
did you do the other work that goes with it?
mhm,
Did you do the journaling to find out what is underneath that is making you not believe your affirmations?
mhm.
You know, did
Or
you,
are you actually happy and you just forgot that you are?
that happens too.
I
That,
mean, habits of thought are very powerful, and you could actually be evolving and negating yourself thinking that you're not until somebody comes along like your friend who says, "You're different." I am? I thought I was the same old broken me.
you know, I was feeling a little dejected earlier,
Mhm,
and it's just not dejected as much as a little down.
mhm,
And I texted my son, and he texted me something back about he's been watching me his whole life, and I'm amazing, or I'm this, whatever. And it
mhm.
was like, really? That's how my 25-year-old sees me. I guess I'm okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm okay if my 25-year-old has that to say about me, right?
Mhm. And he says it behind your back too.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Just
Uh, so so I think if we're going to talk about self-mastery,
Mhm,
we have to acknowledge that it is a process,
mhm,
and it is not an over it's not like an overnight process.
mhm,
You know, it's like people, like, if you want a really good loaf of bread, you have to let it rise and punch it down and let it rise again and cut it and work it just right.
mhm.
You know, I it you know I love the way I cook steak. I've been cooking steak for 40 years. I know exactly how to do it. The first 20 years I was okay. The next 10 years I was pretty good. The last 10 years I'm the girl, you
Yeah.
know. Um we we have to create a curiosity about ourselves.
Mhm.
We have to understand that our mind is going to want to be lazy. We have to understand that our mind wants us to do the easiest thing.
Mhm.
It wants us to become addicted to whatever is simple in our space.
Mhm.
But if we want something better, we have to do something better.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have to do is we also have to question how we were raised.
Mhm.
And I think we have to be a little careful, because our parents weren't necessarily bad or wrong. Now, there are some toxic parents out there. There's some parents with severe mental illness. There are parents with all kinds of problems. They're human too.
Mhm.
And
That's
some,
also where that inquiry comes in is, were my parents doing the best they can, or am I trying to gloss over it because people told me to think that way? It's-
or if being an alcoholic is the best they can do,
Mhm,
can I let them be them and stop blaming them for how I am now as an adult?
mhm,
Can I maybe acknowledge that I do want a relationship, even though it's maybe a difficult one. Maybe I have to set boundaries. Maybe I don't get to let them, the adult parent, run it. Maybe I have to have more initiation in this, or maybe it is a situation where it's better for both of us if we're not in touch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I think this is where things like Twitter with 140 characters is extremely dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't say very much in 140 characters that means anything. And this is why you've all heard me say I hate cliches,
Mm-hmm.
because to me, cliches don't create inquiry.
Yeah.
Different people have different experiences. Some people, it's a great reminder. For me, it's like, go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Ask a deeper question. So when we were talking about like mindset, we do get to make choices about where we direct our thoughts. We do get to make choices about reprogramming ourselves.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we don't have to clean up the stuff that's in the way.
Yeah, the situations keep coming.
Now,
you're never going to have a day where you drive and somebody doesn't make a decision in the car next to you that you're like, what are they doing?
And you don't have any control over that.
Right. You don't get to drive their car for them. You just get to decide where you're going to be. Do you want to be next to that car? Take a step back, zoom up ahead, get in on a different road.
What's even more stressful sometimes is when it's somebody that's close to us. We were talking earlier about a situation where you were able to use mindset to keep yourself more where you wanted to be, but that other person wasn't hearing you, didn't want to hear you. And there's no number of word tracks that you could come up with that are going to make him hear you.
No.
And that's not your lack of mastery.
Mm-hmm. But that took me a long time to get to, because in my past, before I did all this work, I was a huge enabler. I would have thought it was my job to drive that other car and my car, which, how do you do that? But I felt like I had to. And it's only in doing my work on myself and dealing with why did I think that, So now I run through these questions in my head, really rapid fire through practice of, is this my responsibility or someone else's responsibility that I'm taking on for them? That's my big thing. That's what I have to work on. And when I started that was excruciatingly painful. I felt so mean for not doing things for people. And now that I'm further in this process and it's just such rapid fire quick, it's like, oh no, they get to learn something from their own behavior. Okay, cool. Like, not my job, not my responsibility, not my circus, not my monkeys, right? So, but it took me a really long time to get to that. And I still have to check myself on it. I still have to like, wait, oh no, that's right. That's not my job. But my instinct is to still, so no matter how much work I've done on it, I still have to keep reminding myself,
Well, yeah, because what we have to remember is if we step over here to science, epigenetics, which is the programming around ourselves, not the DNA itself, but the things that are passed down from generation to generation that aren't necessarily held in the DNA, but wrap around the DNA. Some people would call that family karma. There's a lot of different places things you would call that. Are some people their family way. But let's face it, my son kind of acts like my father sometimes.
Yeah.
And my son never met my father.
Yeah.
And it's not me projecting, because it's shocked me when I saw it, right? So there's this whole epigenetics. So we're all affected by epigenetics. Some people say that it goes back as far as 14 generations.
Yeah.
That were affected by our epigenetics. I believe in the Bible, it's like 7 generations by 7 generations. And I believe that in other cultures, it's like the 7 generations. So most of the things that I have read, most cultures acknowledge that there are things that just go with the family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your red hair and your blue eyes, or your blue eyes and your blonde hair, or somebody having a certain shaped nose or face or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Then there's our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And our DNA carries, like, they don't even know everything that the DNA carries. And then there's our culture. There's like all these things that before we even get to make one choice.
Yeah.
Before you make one choice, before you're verbal, before
you even know you exist. Yeah.
You know you exist, like this whole framework that your whole little body is growing up in, and your body and your neurobiology is existing inside of this framework. You haven't made one choice. You don't know how to speak a word.
No.
All you are is frequency and vibration and epigenetics and goo and DNA. Yeah. And this is all being programmed.
Yeah. You're literally receiving messages before you have any idea that it's a message.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So why is it shocking that when you finally get to a level in life where you're like, oh, what do these messages mean, that you're confused because you're dealing with how many years of messages that you have to unpack in the first place?
And not everything is a choice. Anybody, in my opinion, who says everything is a choice is not dealing with the holistic experience of being human.
No.
There's
lots of things people do not choose.
There's a lot of things we don't choose.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're responsible for them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not responsible for the things your parents did when you were a young person that are kind of messed up.
Mm-hmm.
There you are, you live with them,
mm-hmm.
And your mindset work is the thing that gives you enough mastery to not devolve into the things that you didn't like in your family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people out here, if we didn't have some kind of tool to give us some kind of strength in this storm, would have succumbed to the deliverance part of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
those of you who don't know what deliverance is, I'm talking about the movie. There's that in all of us, the worst in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there.
Yeah.
And we do have to make choices. Like, I have to make choices. I did not choose to have an ADHD brain. But I grew like inside of my birth mother. And I don't know if this is the case or not, but from what I understand, she drank coffee, smoked cigarettes, and bologna sandwich were what she ate.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't choose that.
Mm-mm.
I didn't choose to have a brain that can't hold on to dopamine. Come on, let's face it. We all want to hold our dopamine.
We're all doing everything we can to find as much of it as we can.
No. I mean, so the point I'm making here is part of self-mastery is accepting the process.
Mm-hmm.
Is accepting that, they say 10,000 hours makes you an expert.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us have actually put 10,000 hours into making choices, developing our body, mind, spirit, integrating, healing, and so often we just think it's supposed to, like, I read that book, Why Didn't I Change?
Mm-hmm.
I've had people say that to me.
Yeah.
Or I've had people pick. Now, I know a lot of people love Tony Robbins, and I know he's done a lot of good for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you how many people I've had come to me and say, well, I spent $15,000 and I was at Tony Robbins for a week, and I came back, and in 2 weeks I didn't have any, it was all gone.
Mm-hmm.
do you think that Tony Robbins gave you the red pill or the blue pill? Like,
Yeah, you got to integrate it.
Tony Robbins gave you his time, his energy, set an example, and you probably got some reading material and videos. What are you doing with them?
Exactly.
You know,
Well,
it's,
I'm reminded of we just experienced the Super Bowl, right? And everyone spends all this time praising someone like Patrick Mahomes. What an amazing quarterback he is. He's already got 2 Super Bowl rings. Like he's on track to be the next Tom Brady. Like he's so amazing. Do you think that he did that without working his butt off? Like he's 27 years old. He has 2 Super Bowl rings. Do you think that he has like any part of him that's like, you know what, I think I'll just sit around and eat pizza tonight? Like, no, like he is busting his butt to be the best physical presence he can be. And being a quarterback, he's got to learn all those plays and he's got to learn how to switch it up on the field and think. He's got all this stuff going on with him. He's not sitting on the couch watching the game. Gets to listen to a bunch of people who that's all they do and complain about the way he's doing it, right? But that's what we're doing in our lives. Like, are we becoming a Super Bowl contender? Or are we watching it on Hulu the day after? Like,
and for some, there are things that I know I will only ever be a spectator of.
Mhm.
Like, I am not a good baker. I mean, I can bake something and it tastes good mostly, but
the wedding cake you made me was wonderful.
I practiced for over 2 weeks. Do you know how many cakes I made? More. That is the most effort I have ever put into
Thank you.
baking effort.
And it was really pretty too.
I literally practiced, and poor Jacob, thank God he's young and he has a high metabolism. He had to keep tasting my
Oh darn, he had to eat a lot of cake.
But the point is, that is the first time I genuinely cared and put a lot of effort into making a cake nice.
Yeah.
There was that, and there was another cake I made that was like a all-day 6-hour chocolate Guinness whiskey cake. And it honestly, it was worth it. But I don't care enough to become a master baker.
Yeah.
Like I never fantasize about being on the Great British Baking Show.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I do fantasize about being in Stadium Kitchen.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I get that, because I mean, and that is a really great point to make, is that becoming a master of whatever it is you want to be a master and having self-mastery in that is selective. You cannot possibly do it in all things. No one has that much energy, bandwidth, whatever you want to call it. You got to pick and choose. Even in this world of personal growth, right? There are certain things that I just want to embody it all. I want to understand myself at a level so that I can understand others at a level. There's this drive in me to know more. And then other things get introduced to me and I'm like, that's cute. Like it's not where I'm led, because that's somebody else's thing to be a master in. If you go bowling with me, I'm putting up the bumpers like I'm 5, and I don't care if you like it or not. Like, I don't care. I'm there bowling with you. I'm there to connect with you. That's what I care about. I will get 10 pins. I don't care. Not there to win, there to participate, because that's what I care about. So it's that thing. It's picking and choosing,
Well, and that, we often pick and choose based on our skills, based on our purpose, based on our talents,
our interest,
our inherent interest. And so I laugh at the fact that, I'm not a great baker. I mean, could I? Yeah. Do I care to? Not unless I'm. The 2 times that I really baked something memorable were for people I cared about. It's for you and for a friend's St. Patrick's Day.
Because what you care about is the connection to the people you love, not the cake.
What I care about is giving the person I care about something.
Yes.
But I don't really care about the cake.
Mhm.
So, there are things like I love watching sailboats.
Mm.
I fully acknowledge that I do not have the strength, the talent, the interest, the sense of balance, or enough interest to learn what's actually.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like I look at it and it's like it's really pretty. I don't care.
Yeah.
I love watching figure skating.
Hmm.
I think figure skating is one of the most beautiful things in the world. I can watch it. It is my favorite Olympic sport. It is my favorite sport across the board.
Hmm.
And I can't stand up on it.
Yeah.
I cannot stand up on two blades. I can't.
Yeah.
I can be a great audience though. I do not have to master something to appreciate it.
Hmm.
So
You just made me think of a sign I have in my bathroom that says, "We can't all be princesses. Somebody needs to clap when I walk by." We can't all be the self-master, right? Like some of us have to be you're on the parade and I get to cheer for you when you go by, so.
well, and I think this is one of the mistakes that we make, and this is one of the illusions. I was actually watching an old video clip of Cher and Raquel Welch. I think it might have been on the Carol Burnett show, if I remember the stage correctly. But Raquel Welch, who, God bless her, she just passed away, I think actually today. And Cher, I mean, both of these phenomenally different and phenomenally gorgeous women and powerhouse women, especially in their days. And they're singing the song that eventually became the Angelique perfume song, which is I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan, and I can do all of these things.
I'm a woman.
I think that there's a bit of an illusion that we have fallen under, which is we're supposed to be able to do it all. We're supposed to want to do it all.
Yeah.
And that's, we don't have to.
Well, and the other thing you just made me think of is not only do we not all have to do everything, but we also don't have to feel judged if somebody else doesn't want to do the thing we want to do. Because we're doing that too. Like I don't have to do everything and be good at everything, but it's not a judgment from someone else if they're not into my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Grace all around. Like everybody enjoy what you enjoy and get good at what you want to get good at.
Yes. And I think one of the things that is important is that all of us unlearn the things that limit us and hurt us.
Yes.
And that's one of the important parts of self-mastery and self-awareness and mindset. And the Enneagram these are all tools to unlearn the things that keep us from being happy.
I agree.
And so, self-mastery, absolutely. I should be able to help myself regulate myself. If I notice myself being dysregulated, I should, and I'm shoulding on myself, but this is a personal value I have. And I think it's worthy. I think if more people did have more self-mastery, we would have fewer problems. We would have fewer people looking for leaders who end up being false leaders or false prophets, because there's plenty of people out there in positions of power that are not leaders. And yet we turn them into leaders because too often it is too hard to take 100% or as much responsibility for ourselves as we can.
Yeah.
100% is ridiculous, because we go back to this whole idea that all this stuff happened to us before, while we were nerve endings and goo. But
I love that.
But how much responsibility can we take?
Yeah.
How much can we do to help ourselves? How much can we do to manage ourselves, to make ourselves more genuinely who we want to be, rather than who and what we were told to be? How do we discover our gifts and talents instead of being somebody else's robot?
Yeah.
That's part of self-mastery, in my opinion, is what is it that I want to master?
Mhm.
And some people, absolute legitimate, master themselves through things like martial arts,
Yes.
through a physical expression of control, so that if they do need to punch somebody in the mouth, they can do it in a, a
In
particular.
an effective way, efficiency, right? That's what our brains want.
Yes, if somebody really deserves a good kick in the teeth,
I mean,
it's
but
it's
also knowing when you don't have to, right?
it's done with precision, and you actually make a decision about whether or not you do it. It's not just a reaction.
Yes. And
Sometimes
isn't that the whole point of self-mastery, is to just not be reactive?
that,
And when things happen beyond your control, like I was explaining to you how I feel like I'm a landmine field, and I give everyone a map, but if I point at the landmine and you decide to step on it anyway, am I responsible or are you, because you stepped on it, right? We can't control every situation, but we can ask ourselves, do I need to punch somebody in the mouth right now, or do I need to hold that back? Like, and that's what awareness and mastery gives you, is the ability to ask that question. Not even asking that question is the lack of mastery.
yes,
So it comes back to that inquiry.
we've all heard the phrase, revenge is a dish best served cold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's best served cold because then you're coming from a place of conscious choice,
Yeah. Not just response.
not just boom, like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I see you.
I think that's the best way to put it. Self-mastery is conscious choice. It's being aware of what's happening and making a decision of what you want to do with that information.
Yes, it's not controlling everything, which goes back to the comment that you made earlier about you don't control the fact that sometimes you get down, or that life, throws a bucket of
Mm-hmm.
whatever on you.
Yeah.
But how do you respond to that? How do you consciously choose? Like you know, I could have done a lot of things, and what I decided to do was to go for a walk
Mm-hmm.
and to take the vitamins I forgot to take,
Mm-hmm.
and to step outside in the cool, moist air and
Mm-hmm.
refresh myself. And then I felt better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do a lot of training for my own mastery in affirmations. It's a big deal to me. And I read a book that was contrary to that, saying, oh, happy people don't need to tell themselves they're happy. And I fully disagree. And the reason I fully disagree is because when situations happen to me that knock me down, I can easily get caught up in a self-talk loop of my past, of that I'm not happy, or that things are terrible, or I'm not loved, or whatever lie rolls around in there that I haven't been able to figure out the undo yet, and I'm working on it. But it's those affirmations that I practice all the time that remind me, oh yeah, I'm safe. I'm around good people. I am loved. People would miss me if I wasn't here. And it reminds me, it disrupts the lies to have these affirmations in my head. It won't convince me I'm happy if I'm not happy, but what it does remind me is that, yeah, I am happy when I'm not in the middle of this situation. I'm not supposed to be happy when something terrible happens. Like, can't be happy 100% of the time,
And yeah.
but I'm improved. That's
And
100% of the time.
and it reminds us that the situation is transitory.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which is very helpful because we live in a transitory, dualistic reality.
Mhm.
And there's going to be things that are not just one note happen,
Mhm. It's chaotic out there.
and it's transitory.
Mhm.
It's going to pass. And I know,
Both the things that make you happy and the things that make you sad. You don't get to just sit in it.
right, which
Yeah.
also means, which also means be more present.
Yes.
And, you know, for me, having, you know, recovering from being ill
Mhm.
and dealing with some of the things that I've had, that I've learned about my body,
Mhm.
being grateful.
Yeah.
You know, it's really easy to say, oh, I don't have the strength I once had.
Mhm.
But it's much more effective to say, I know what it feels like to be strong.
Mhm.
And I can be stronger than I am right now.
Mhm. Yeah.
I can be grateful for the fact that in the human body, things repair.
Yeah.
I can be grateful for my ability to teach my body new things or to remember things it used to know.
Mhm.
And I can be responsible for the fact that yes, my physical therapy makes things sore,
Mhm.
but it's okay that they're sore because it means that the next time I go to use them, they'll work better.
Mhm. And
So
it's a reminder, you know, I've been on this journey with you, and you may not be at 100% strength, but you're way further along than you were. You know, so taking that stop to say I'm grateful and I can earn my, you know, I can get back there. It's like, yeah, but you're way farther ahead now than you even think, you
and
know?
the thing is, we're often better off than we think
Yeah.
because the human mind is always looking for problems,
Yes. And
which is
the rest of us are always looking for problems in other people as well.
you know, this human mind is a very interesting beast because it's like, oh, just be relaxed and don't put out extra effort. But then there's that whole survival mechanism, that whole other part of our brain going,
Danger,
danger everywhere.
All of a sudden I have danger, Will Robinson, danger.
So we'll
Yeah.
talk more about this and get into more specifics in another conversation. Thank you for spending this time with me, Jen. I
Yeah.
think that I'd like to wrap it up with saying self-mastery is one of the best gifts you can give yourself
Yeah.
because it is the thing that will provide space for your soul, space for your being. I mean, healing is self-mastery.
It is. It's not for the weak.
All right, we will talk again. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.